Hello, Kristen here. It is a cloudy and foggy day in St. Louis, and I'm going to share some methods on a topic that are still a little foggy for myself because I'm trying to improve my own process. How to edit and revise a paper. For the parents and teachers watching this, you've probably seen your kids and your students struggle with editing a paper. They don't know where to start, they don't know where to end, they can go through the whole process kind of willy-nilly and never really feel like their work's finished. Over the years, I've given my students a lot of different techniques to implement, and there are 3 tips that my students have found the most useful. My first tip is called Quick Fix. To kick off the editing process, I want my students to go through their papers and quickly fix any errors in capitalization, spelling, and punctuation. I don't want them making any major changes like rewording anything or reorganizing anything. That will come in the next step. At this point, I want them to move through their paper at a good pace and make any quick fixes they need to grammar mistakes and typos. This is also a good way for them to get an objective overview of their paper while still making productive changes. My next tip is to make a copy. More emphatically, do not edit the original. My students can get a little caught up making major changes, doing that rewording, doing the reorganizing to their paper, and they can lose parts of their original that were essential to their paper. This recently happened with a 7th grade student of mine. We did a reading assignment, we had a discussion about the theme, and he came up with an excellent theme and quickly pointed out a really strong piece of evidence and analysis for it. So we stopped class right there and I said, you have to get that down on paper, you made a great point. So he started the first draft of his paper. He got about half of it written in class. For homework, I assigned him to go home and finish the paper. He came back to class and his paper was almost completely reworked and it had watered down his original argument. So I suggested that we go back to the original where he had that really strong, clear theme and the strong evidence supporting it. And as you might guess where this story is going, he didn't have his original. This is a primary example why I advise my students to make a copy of each draft as they edit. My third tip is to take a break. 2 weeks ago, I had a student come into our tutoring session with the first draft and second draft of a paper. She presented both to me, and I looked at the first, I looked at the second. I couldn't find any significant differences in the papers. As I pointed this out to her, she reluctantly admitted that she had written both of the papers just the night before class. So we spent most of our class that day revising and editing her paper. She was able to make most of the improvements herself after taking just an overnight break from her writing. I advise all of my students, if they're going to take the time to edit their paper, they need to take a break in between their versions. Write the original, take a day off. Write the next draft. If they're going to get feedback from somebody, take a day off before they write their next version. I realize this might make the writing process longer, but in the end, they end up with a very high quality piece of writing. The editing process is a little bit foggy because it's different for each of my students, but these 3 tips they've consistently liked. First is to begin with quick fixes. The second is to make copies as they go, and the third is to take breaks along the way.